Hello, everyone, and welcome to the IT On Call podcast. I'm your host, Ross to the Rescue Feldman. I am the Chief Technology Officer of Better Call IT. If business technology is your headache, Better Call IT is your Advil. I'm on with Shawn Garrett of Garrett PLLC. How you doing today, Shawn?
Ross, I'm doing great. A little cold. I'm in Illinois currently, but I am good.
That's good. That's good. I love the miracle of technology because we met in Charlotte. You live in Charlotte. We talk in Charlotte, and then boom, you're in Illinois. So it's so easy to be able to connect and do a podcast, no matter where anybody is across the globe.
Of course.
I definitely. I've been to Charlotte 31 years myself. How long have you been in the Charlotte area?
I've been in Charlotte since 2019. So my wife and I moved down here May of 2019. Originally born and raised in Greenville, South Carolina, and that's one reason why we gravitated back to this area. I left to go to undergrad and law school. My parents moved out of South Carolina when I was in high school, and I struggled with the weather and the big city life. We were just outside the Chicago suburbs, and also wanted to be closer to my family. So we ended up moving back, and it's been absolutely great.
I love that. And that's the thing is we all have to travel for family. And I've got family in the Northeast, in Midwest and Wisconsin. So they're dealing with the blizzard that you've been dealing with in Illinois. So I have family pain. I definitely know how you're doing there. Law is such a broad subject, and a lot of people get into it. What made you niche down to the business law and in that niche of technology business law?
Yeah, first of all, just had a background in it. My undergraduate degree was in business administration, and so very passionate about business and all things business. But when it came to where I was going to focus law, it really just made sense for me because of my background, my experience, my passion. And, I had gotten experience in a few other areas of law, including litigation, family law, some criminal law, and some real estate. None of it really settled with me. But when I started advising business owners, it just felt natural. And I was very excited about it, very excited about opening my firm. And it's been a great run.
It's so funny because I've always enjoyed talking to business owners about business and then talking to business owners about technology. And then when the idea of this podcast came out, I was like, the intersection of business and technology. So this allows me to do what I love doing, which is talking about business technology with fellow business owners. And it just grew from there. So on this episode, we're talking about AI and law. So definitely, where is AI in all of this?
Oh, man. So but I thought about how we were going to tackle this, and we've got three different kind of schools of thought that we could come from. One I'll touch on, but we'll avoid. The first is going to be, any regulations or compliance issues when it comes to AI. And my initial thought there was, it's too broad of a concept for us to discuss. The government themselves are really trying to figure out how they're going to address regulation in AI. It's also going to be very industry specific. So then I thought, okay, that's probably not an avenue for us to go down. The second avenue I thought about was how business owners are implementing AI. And, the obvious discussion is cutting out service providers in support of AI. But then you've got a third approach that I think we'll probably spend a little bit more time. But let's say that the business owner still decides to engage their counsel or an attorney or an accountant or whoever they engage. Being sure that AI is being used practically and responsibly in that relationship. No one wants to pay exuberant fees for legal costs and then just to find out that the document that they received was generated all by AI. So I do think we'll probably focus on that third prong a little bit more, how AI has impacted the legal sector, but then also touching on business owners and them using AI in their day-to-day practice. So.
I am guilty of that. I use AI in this podcast to do the podcast description, the social media posts, to grab bio. I just gave your website and your name, and ChatGPT went out and grabbed all the information about you. And I asked for your mini bio to shove that in there, so ChatGPT has more information to chew on. And
Yeah, of course.
it's so interesting because I'm a managed service provider. I'm an MSP, and a big part of MSP is our managed service agreement, or MSA, that we sign with businesses. And some of my compatriots have done MSAs generated by AI, by ChatGPT, and it's been highly recommended. You must have a local, North Carolina lawyer who's familiar to review whatever output that is, because AI, it comes up with whatever words seem to string together, and it has imagination, and it daydreams and comes up with some words that just, they don't make sense in the legal frame set.
Yeah. No, one of the examples that I brought today, I came with show and tell, some legal theory, but I got on ChatGPT this morning, and I asked it to generate an asset purchase agreement, the document that I draft pretty frequently when it comes to business owners buying and selling businesses. But the representations and warranties is probably the most important piece of that entire document. Some reps and warranties and purchase agreements can be 4, 5, 6 pages long. So, just to give you the scope of it. And the reps and warranties that I got in the ChatGPT generated asset purchase agreement were: seller says that it has full power to enter into this document, and the purchase assets are free and clear of all liens and encumbrances. Now, that is one sentence that encompasses reps and warranties of an asset purchase agreement. And for the seller, they probably love that, because they're kind of getting off scot-free. They're saying that's all I'm guaranteeing in this transaction. But it leaves more ambiguity than anything, and it allows the door to be opened for both parties. So traditional reps and warranties that we would put into a purchase agreement would be something along the lines of seller having full authority to enter into the agreement, purchased assets being free and clear of all liens, but being a little bit more granular and defining what those purchase assets are, stating that not only does the seller have authority to enter into the agreement, but seller also has authority to transfer the assets. Because when you think about that, yes, the seller can enter into the agreement, but me telling you could buy my vehicle is a different story than actually selling you the vehicle. You know what I'm saying? One's theoretical and one is very, very much more practical. So whenever I think about an AI generated document, I think they're okay from a framework standpoint. And I transparently use AI in my practice when it comes to quick emails, when it comes to my podcast description. I use AI often. I'm not saying AI is bad, but when you're engaging in an agreement with someone, you want the experience and the thought process to hash out, well, what am I really exposing myself to, and what do I need to protect myself from?
Right. And that's so, we talk a lot in IT about risk, right? That there's business risk of data loss, risk of ransomware, and having your data held hostage, and your proprietary information leaking out onto the internet. And, what we're here as IT professionals to do is to mitigate risk. And business owners are busy operating their businesses. They're not considering risk. And I think it's important for us as outside counsel to bring that to the table and make them aware of the risks that are involved with an endeavor.
Agreed. I agree entirely. Most of the time, my business owners are not extremely thankful that I'm drafting a document and sending it to them blindly. They're extremely thankful when I pick up the phone and call them and say, XYZ is the concern. How do we address it? And they say, wow, I never thought about that before. And then my response to them is, well, I've seen it in 5, 10 other transactions. It's something we need to address today so that you're not, having the headache tomorrow.
Yeah, the headache tomorrow, the Advil today. The definitely, it's the whole. I'm passionate about technology, but I'm passionate about business as well. MSPs grow through acquisition. they love to buy each other. Bigger ones love to buy the small ones. Medium-sized ones merge with medium-sized ones, and there's always a loser and a winner. It's never a merge of cultures. There's no such thing. One culture wins, one culture loses. But to become a MSP that's desirable for acquisition is you have to have contracts, and you have to have contracts that are locked in for 3 years. And one of those things when you have those contracts is the transference of those contracts, that you have to have it written in, because the new organization can just pick up the old contracts. Whereas if there's not transference in the contract, then the new organization has to draft new agreements, and then that can give the customer the opportunity to leave. So, getting everybody locked in. I personally don't do a lot of contracts with my clients. I'm very handshake and word of mouth and day to day and month to month. And there's trust. I've had the same clients for 25 years. The business has been operating. I've only lost. I had to divorce one client, unfortunately, because they were just too cheap. They didn't want to pay $10 a month for a website. I feel like $10 a month is pretty affordable. So we were just not a good match, and so they're on their own, and I'm not working with them anymore. So it's one of those that we have to have a good match with our clientele.
No, I agree with that entirely. And at the end of the day, I love that you bring up the fact that sometimes we have to divorce our clients. Sometimes I think this to myself all the time. I am not right for everybody. There are major corporations on the planet that are not a good fit for my company. They are for my law firm. There are very small companies that don't necessarily need counsel currently or aren't being receptive to counsel, and very similar in the IT world. I'm sure that there are clients that are too big and too small for you. And one of the reasons that we network so much and we're out in the community and we're trying to meet people is because we're looking for those clients that are right. We're not just looking for all clients. We're looking for the people that are right for Ross and Shawn. So.
And I think it's a step of maturation in a business. When you're in the infancy, you'll take any and all business, no matter what shape, form, pain, no matter what it takes, you'll take any business. And then after 2 years of business, you start to learn what is your unique selling proposition and what is your ideal client profile. And those are very popular marketing terms that I love in business. I'm a fractional leader. I'm a fractional CTO, but you're fractional counsel. And when do they bring you in, right? Do they bring you in before the transaction or after all the crap has hit the fan and they need you to come and clean it all up?
I know when I want to be brought in. And that's not always the same time frame that I am brought in. That's a great point. When it comes to business purchases, obviously, maybe it's not obvious, but we typically handle some light civil litigation, contract drafting and disputes. But our bread and butter is the mergers and acquisitions process, so business purchasing and selling. So I'll just focus on that for the transaction. But just to start any buy-sell agreement, you're really starting with a letter of intent, an LOI we call it. And most of the time, we are brought in at the tail end of that. That document's already drafted and executed, and we can't really negotiate from there. We just need to execute, which is perfectly fine. That's the attorney being seen as more of a word processor than anything. Let's clean it up. Let's make this LOI protected, and let's go from there. But the transactions where we're brought in pre-LOI and we are an advisor along with an accountant, a business broker, even an IT team. I've had some calls where IT teams are extremely important because we've got a lot of data that needs to be transferred. The data is the asset. You talked about MSPs being bought and sold. One of my largest transactions in my company, my firm, was an MSP that we represented that sold earlier this year. They closed day after New Year's. And in situations like that, we're dealing so heavily with, well, how is the data being transferred? We don't have VIN numbers. We don't have equipment. We don't have products to transfer. So what are you buying? And then getting an IT team involved and helping with some of those definitions. Great relationships, and I highly recommend it.
And that's the thing is that what is proprietary that you stand out with and what's a viable asset? I did deal with a firm that was closing. The gentleman who ran it was retiring in December. of 2023. And he came to me and he says, I have 10 clients. Do you want them? And I said, yes. It turns out that they weren't all the greatest fit because they hadn't been primed for MSP. They were all break fix. Break fix is a whole different model than MSP. So they weren't used to paying monthly. They were used to paying when things broke. And if things didn't break, they never wanted to pay. So it was an education for them to learn about MSP. And then it was a question of whether they would fit or not. And so it was a long year last year in 2024 to keep them running with break fix and then introduce them to MSP. And then some of them have turned around and said, well, we don't want to do it. So they just were not a good fit. And that's the thing is I should have done more culture work ahead of time to see, okay, he had 10 clients. I pictured 10 of my clients, but 10 of his clients were different than my clients. So lesson learned on that.
Yeah,
when,
of course.
When you have a new business owner who's a startup, how did that conversation go when it comes to law? What kind of conversation do you have with them?
Yeah, so we start out by just asking very broadly, what are you doing? Because we need to know what their business is. If they come back and they say, we are acquirers of cannabis companies, I would likely tell them we're not the right fit because I just don't have enough exposure to federal law when it comes to cannabis regulation. But let's say that they come back and they say we are let's say we're a real estate brokerage, very very successful brokerage, and we're trying to merge with another company. I'd say perfect. That's right in our wheelhouse. It's something that we can handle. From there, I get out all conversations regarding fees. And then we just disclose what our fees are. We try to give a ballpark of hours, even though it becomes very difficult to do that at times because transactions ebb and flow. And then from there, we get out an engagement agreement, very non-committal, but that's our initial consultation. From there, once we have the engagement agreement executed, we then will follow up for documents that we need to review or to begin execution, and then we're off to the races. But we always start with that initial engagement conversation, that initial consultation, just to ensure that it's a good fit for both parties and that we can serve their needs.
I definitely have initial conversations, and I was just at CRG that you spoke at. Thank you so much for coming to Indian Trail. It was a great speech that you did. We were just having our meeting this morning, and we were talking about red flags when it comes to the initial conversation with a potential client. And I threw out their price. If they start with how much do you cost before we even have a hello, how are you? It's not a good fit for me. I'm a boutique. I'm white glove. I'm not the cheapest. I'm not the most expensive. But, I charge middle market, and I'm a middle market company. And that's, if you want to work with me, I'd love to work with you. And if you don't want to work with me, I actually have others that I can recommend on both ends of the spectrum so that you work with a provider. You find a good provider. There are plenty of providers, just like people who say they speak Spanish, who say they know IT and they just know one section of IT. I pride myself as a CTO knowing as many facets of IT as I can. And that goes as far as digital signage. A client with a theater needed digital signage installed, like the Broadway lights. And I had to learn that, and I had to research that and be able to answer those questions just to be able to be the service to the client that I want to service. When someone comes to you with something you haven't seen before, how do you connect with your network and get more information about it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm pretty involved with a few different bar associations, both nationally, internationally possibly, and locally in North Carolina and Mecklenburg County. So I have I won't call them a team, but I have a pretty extensive network of attorneys that can handle a matter. So if it's too big or small for me, or if it's outside of my wheelhouse, I can certainly tap on them. We've even structured relationships where myself and another firm will come in and will support a matter. So we've done that before. But another thing I'll toss out there, and one of the reasons why I like what I do so much is that people pay me to research. It's legitimately my job. to research, to fact find, to try to determine what the answer is. Now, if we already know it, that's perfect. But I interact with attorneys that have been practicing 30, 40 years, and they're still running into first blush cases that they've never seen or heard of before, and their job's to research it. A good attorney is an attorney that's able to research without getting bogged down in the weeds. So to kind of cut through some of the mess and the red herrings and the clutter and get to the issue. If my client comes to me and says, let's take the brokerage example, Shawn, we have an issue. We don't know how to transfer the relationship to the client. And let's say I didn't know how to properly structure that. If I came back to them and said, hey guys, I found an Excel sheet and we could just write it down and transfer it to them, they'd probably say, Shawn, we could have done that ourselves. Why do we hire you? But if I come to them with a document that says, okay, let's put all of our let's put all of our relationships into this portal. Let's chronicleize them and mark the date of the relationship being formed so that we know who truly owns this, so that we can commingle them. But then we can also uncommingle them if things go south. That is a much more sophisticated structure approach that my client would likely say, you know what, that's what I was looking for. I wasn't looking for something basic. So
I have a promotions guy that you've met, Mike Ferretti, and I was talking about him this morning because it's a commoditized business. I can go to Google and go Google shopping and go pick up a nail file if I'm trying to buy a nail file. But having a conversation with somebody who understands the business and then tries to understand my business and what my goals are for my marketing, that consultancy is really powerful. And I was giving him kudos at our shout outs at our networking group about how he consulted with me and he gave me ideas and he sold 3x the product that I was going to buy from him. It was like, he did a good job upselling me, which he does every time I talk to him. He's always after my bank account. But it's good stuff. It's good results. It's good spending of my marketing dollars. I could throw the marketing dollars at Google ads, but in this case, products was something that was going to work well with the venue that we're doing it at. So definitely something. How are you marketing your business today?
Yeah, great question. A lot of it's boots on the ground. A lot of it's very interpersonal. A lot of it's through other attorneys. My best referral source is other attorneys. My biggest clients have come from other attorneys that have vetted their clients and they've said, I can't handle or I can't do what you're doing, what you'd like to do. An estate attorney that their clients now selling their business, that's not something that they would traditionally handle. So that would get referred to me. So again, a lot of bar events when it comes to the bar associations, a lot of networking events. That's where you and I connected, both CRG, Charlotte Entrepreneurs event, Charlotte Business Group's another great event that I go to. So yeah, a lot of networking.
It's so funny. I have a newsletter I do with Tara McAllister called the networkingnewsletter.com. And we take the list and we propagate the list of all the Charlotte networking events every month. And there's over 100 Charlotte networking events every month. But you look at that number and there's only 30 days in the month. So there's more networking events happening than days in the month. So it's impossible to go everywhere, but you find your crowd, you find where your client's at, you find the venue and the format that works for you. I always recommend if people want to try BNI, try CRG. If they're going to do Block or Blue or CBEX or HTA, 4BR, the Network Build Grow, NBG. There are so many groups in just Charlotte, and there's many choices. And you work with people you know, like, and trust. And Shawn, I know, like, and trust you. So when I go to buy my next MSP, I'm going to call you up and be like, all right, let's make this transaction happen.
We'll protect you.
The law is one of those things is, like taxes, right? Like it's going to be there. It's there to protect you. It's there for a reason. Uncle Sam gets his hands in everything, and so does the judicial system, but it's there for a reason. It's there to protect us and there to help us. What is your favorite story about law or a law firm type story that you've got?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm actually going to pivot that story back to our AI chat. I came with another show and tell. I came bearing gifts, Ross. So this story is actually pretty recent. Most of the stories that you hear, big court decisions, I feel like they were 20, 30, 40 years ago. Most of them were not June 8th, 2023. But this case is less than 2 years old. But reading the facts, the lawyer for a man suing an airline in a routine personal injury suit used ChatGPT to prepare a filing. The AI bot delivered fake cases that the attorney then presented to the court, prompting a judge to weigh sanctions as the legal community grapples with one of the first cases of AI hallucinations. This was a Colombian-based airline that sought to dismiss a federal court case in which a man was allegedly struck by a piece of metal. And when filing a response, the lawyers cited at least 6 cases that did not exist. And what typically happens when a lawyer files a motion or something to the court, the clerk for the judge will take these cases and he'll try to make sure that the law makes sense, right? He'll make sure that the case says exactly what the lawyer is saying the case says. Now, what's even more interesting about this, and I'm not necessarily blaming AI for this attorney didn't proofread his document that he was submitting. And I think that really goes to what is an attorney's role. An attorney is not only there to draft a document, not only there to make sure that the facts are the facts and make sure that the cases are real and that they're not in fake cases, but also to be that last check where you look it over and make sure that what it says is what you want it to say. I have so many clients that it kind of cracks me up, but they we'll go back and forth reviewing and drafting a document, and then once the other party sends it back and then they say we're good to sign, here's the execution copy, my client sends it back to me one more time and says make sure that this is the final copy. They make sure nothing else got slipped in. And I love it. I think that that's my role, and I appreciate that they have that trust in me to say, it's not that I don't trust that other party, but just make sure this is the last one. Just put eyes on it. So I would say currently that's my favorite legal case because it adds so much color to what my role is and what my job is, and how AI can and shouldn't be used. Again, not bashing AI in any way, shape, or form. I have it, but just ensuring that it's not doing your job for you; it's assisting in your job. It's a virtual assistant.
I like that. And I think it's a tool, it's a hammer, it's a screwdriver. You have to learn how to use it. You have to learn how to wield it. I'm opening the floor to final arguments. What else did you want to make sure to cover during this podcast today?
Yeah. The only other example that I had, I think we're good. The only other example that I had was when it came to commercial leases. We draft and negotiate commercial leases quite a bit. I asked ChatGPT to create a commercial lease for me, and it spat out a commercial lease. And I was ready to print it off and take it to the landlord and say, here you go. But then I was reading one of the provisions, and again, I'm being very facetious, but I was reading one of the provisions and it said, no subleasing, period. And I said to myself, that's fine. That is fine that no subleasing is allowed. But what happens 3 years into my 5-year deal as a business owner when I then need to sublease? Not want to, need to, because either business isn't working out or I'm growing or something happens. And my initial blush is, finding a middle ground for everyone, not being confrontational, not being contentious, not, making the transaction difficult for both parties. But my middle ground response is typically no subleasing without landlord approval. Everyone's happy. The tenant can sublease if the landlord approves. And then I also add in the words not to be unreasonably withheld, but no subleasing without landlord approval, which is not to be unreasonably withheld. Everyone's happy. We can even niche it down further and make it a little bit more restrictive and say no subleasing without landlord's approval to a company that practices anything other than what that entity does. So let's say you're an MSP, Ross, as you are. Your commercial lease could say you can sublease to other MSPs. So and the landlord's simply happy with that because as long as they're getting paid, they don't care. But you're not allowed to bring in a Subway because maybe Jimmy John's is next door. So those are just some of the things. Those are just some of the things that I deal with on a daily basis. Where I ask ChatGPT to give me some clarity, and I looked at it and I said, okay, good. Commercial lease, perfect. No subleasing. But is it worth the time to my client to pay me for 30 minutes of time if 3 years down the road they can sublease? I think my answer is yes.
And you were doing it what's right for the client. You were thinking about the client first. And ChatGPT is not thinking about anything; it doesn't think. But yeah,
Exactly.
So if people want to reach out to you with questions and for more information about your firm and law, how can they reach you?
Yeah, Garrett PLLC on all platforms. That's GARRETT, PLLC. Also, my email is Shawn, SHAWN, at GarrettPLLC.com. Or you can just go to GarrettPLLC.com. Happy to chat with anyone. I love what I do. I love business. And I'm here for you.
And that's the thing, is you can reach out to me the same way. ScheduleRoss.com. It's my bookable Calendly. It's available. We can do coffee. We can do food. We can do a virtual meeting. My calendar is open to any and all clients and listeners of the podcast. And I'm always here for you. Thanks so much, Shawn, for the time today. Much appreciated.
Thanks, Ross. Take care.